Greetings everyone, this is SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, here to bring you another episode review from Season 5 of The Loud House. Today's episode is titled, Appetite for Destruction. First we'll discuss the plot, and then my thoughts and critiques with my final score. So, let's get right into it. The episode begins with Lily acting not as sweet as she usually is, and the parents think someone at her preschool is the cause of her bad behavior. They send Lenny to the school to see who the negative influence might be, and it seems like everyone in class is the culprit. The parents try to find better friends for Lily, and they settle on a polite boy named Aiden, only for him to be literally driven away following more of Lily's destruction. It turns out the only reason Lily was acting up was because all the Parmesan she had been eating throughout the episode made her constipated. The parents remedy the situation by giving Lily some bran fiber muffins, and she returns to being the nice little girl she was always meant to be. Well, that concludes the plot of the episode, so now we come to my thoughts and critiques. I seriously thought we would never get another episode beyond Schooled where the conflict would focus on Lily and her preschool. This upgrade in her character for the 5th season had taken a back seat for such a long time that I was no longer expecting anything more to come from this when I realized the season was more than halfway finished. But hey, it finally happened, so better late than never. Now, unlike her portrayal in Silence of the Luanns, which in hindsight is more of a hit or miss swerve depending on how you feel about it, this episode was more in line with how Lily was meant to be written now that she's more conscious of her actions. She's usually been presented as the innocent victim of what happens to and around her, and has never been known to intentionally cause destruction. Again, if you want to pretend Silence of the Luanns never happened, or didn't take place until sometime after this episode. Her getting into fights with her siblings is understandably expected, but never coming off as the kind of kid destroying the kitchen because she felt like it. Or so it seemed. The parents had every right to be worried about this sudden shift in Lily's behavior, and had to make sure to stop it before it became a bigger problem a few years down the road. That's when we get a glimpse into the future on what Rita and Lynn Sr. would look like when they more or less become grandparents, and what Lily would look like as a teenager. It would have been nice to hear what kind of voice Grey Griffin would have given her, but one can only imagine. To be honest, I wasn't expecting her to have one side of her head shaved, let alone keep the same hairstyle when Lynn Sr. dreamt of her winning the Nobel Prize for good behavior. The fandom artists who draw Lily as a teenager objectively do her justice a lot better than the artists for this episode, but I digress. Either way, for a rebellious teen, it was something uniquely crazy. Speaking of which, it's crazy how the parents assumed Lily would be the one to cause a level of chaos none of the other kids have ever displayed. I mean, really? Bulldozing the entire house? Seems a bit far-fetched, but just remember where she may have learned that bad behavior. Now, some fans want to call this next piece a negative, and I can see why, but it's also a rather interesting thought to consider. There's a scene where Lily's siblings are indirectly eavesdropping on the parents saying they're not nice kids. Whether that's an insult or part of the running gag of the episode, it really wasn't the best thing to say out loud considering how many ears there are in that house. However, the parents are technically not wrong when you consider their kids' rowdy behavior throughout the series. Their actions towards each other aren't exactly age appropriate for babies, and it wouldn't be a shock if Lily was in fact influenced by what she saw daily. I mean, Lynn Jr. openly admits to teaching Lily how to burp in the disgusting manner she's been known to do. As minimal as it is, that's not a respectable habit to pick up. That's when the parents came to the reasonable conclusion that their daughter, not the other kids in school, were the troublemaker. She was the one acting up, and the other kids joined her in the mayhem. It's like they say about bullies. They're not born with bad behavior, they learn it from watching others. Realistically, it wouldn't be the least bit surprising if those other kids, minus that good-hearted Aiden boy, started going wild and they told their parents they saw Lily do it first. Only then could you undoubtedly refer to Mr. and Mrs. Loud as bad parents. However, it turned out neither the family nor the other school kids were the enablers of Lily's actions. It was because the excess amounts of Parmesan cheese shown and eaten throughout the episode made Lily feel, you know, backed up, so to speak. You could say it's a stupid and predictable revelation, but it's actually not when you do your research on dairy products and when you look at all the foreshadowing that cheese had during the episode. Seriously, if you didn't think all that cheese was going to be significant to the plot, you might want to get your eyes checked. Anyway, Lily is seen eating a lot of cheese, presumably her favorite snack, and we all love eating our favorite foods every now and again. Unfortunately, eating too much of our favorite foods is not a good idea, and cheese has no fiber and lots of fat, which which leads to constipation. If you couldn't go to the bathroom because of how much Parmesan you took in, you'd be pretty mad too. Probably not to the point where you're snarling at others, but you know what I mean. Her actions may have been an over-exaggeration, but that's the power of cartoons for you. So with a little help from Fiber and Bran, Lily was finally able to take care of business, and she went back to her regular old self again. The word regular having two distinct meanings here. Even Lenny realized too much of a good thing isn't such a good thing after all. Speaking of Lenny, even though she didn't play too big of a role beyond finding Lily's bad preschool influence, I enjoyed her on-screen contributions with a little callback to the beginning of the season. She makes a reference to the preschool having a trampoline, as we saw in the season 5 premiere. It's no wonder Lenny was excited to go back there. I'll admit, her moments with the scary dream picture and dollhouse were a little silly, but they were presented in the usual ditzy and adorable way only she can pull off. And finally, we come to Dr. Shuttleworth. This time, she was voiced by Alex Kazaris, not Mindy Sterling. No disrespect, but this new voice simply doesn't match the way that her first voice did. Alex is still a great actress, but Mindy still holds the edge for best voice for Shuttleworth in my book. Overall, with this being the second to last episode produced for the 5th season, it was fairly decent. The title was a good pun, the story and future fantasy sequences gave Lily the on-screen time she desperately needed, and we finally got to see more of what happens at her preschool. The large amounts of Parmesan used to foreshadow the revelation was clever and very cheesy. You know I had to say it. And for what they were worth, Lenny had some funny moments too. I particularly didn't care for Dr. Shuttleworth's new voice, but it's no biggie. With that said, I give Appetite for Destruction an 8.8 out of 10. Well folks, that concludes my review of Appetite for Destruction. For those wondering why I didn't make a single Guns N' Roses reference in this video, because the name of the episode is based off their debut album, let's just say my feelings towards the band are like how Lily felt when she ate all that cheese. I think you can figure out where I'm going with this. So what did you guys think of it? Love it? Hate it? Something you would add? Change? Keep it as it is? Let me know in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to this channel for the latest Loud House content. That's going to do it for me. I'll catch you guys for the next video, but until then, this is SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, signing off. Peace out, home slices.